This part 3 video provides a brief account of my history in God's Church and what is really going on at United Church of God and my next course of action. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide a unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. The part 2 video provided more answers to objections raised about my claim of being a prophet on my religion website and how I started preaching. The part 1 video, I provided a record of events that I believe have happened in my life, such as how I came into the public eye globally, how I have been discriminated against in employment and from making a decent living by destroying my businesses to prevent me from marrying a white woman. Now, to understand what is really going on, I need to provide a brief history of my experiences with ministers in God's church. I started attending Worldwide Church of God in India in 1973. Throughout the history of God's church, Satan has planted many tares or infiltrators, with some of them rising in the ranks to become local church pastors, evangelists, and holding even the topmost positions. Worldwide Church of God has been no exception. The minister in India was a tare, and I dealt with him for nearly 8 years. Before I begin my experiences in the United States, I must state that some leading ministers in God's church have joined the German masqueraders' side and cemented their commitment to them by meeting their hurdle requirement of murdering a member of God's church, most probably on April 19, 2019, on the day we call the night to be much observed, which is the night that immediately follows the Passover. The night is observed with a special dinner and commemorates the night the children of Israel came out of Egypt in the Exodus. In the New Testament significance for us, it means coming out of sin. Such ministers have effectively declared that they are German masqueraders themselves. I will identify such ministers. Normally, I don't like to name people in authority who have done wrong, but I need to name some in this case because they've committed murder and will be ordered to commit murder again. Now, I came to the United States in August 1981. For a brief period of 4 months, I lived in Pittsburgh and attended the University of Pittsburgh. In December 1981, I moved to the Chicago area to attend Northwestern University as a PhD student. The local pastor, Roy Holiday, troubled me tremendously and was behind the communications at Northwestern University to influence professors to prevent me from getting a job and being able to prevent me from marrying a white girl in church. He is still alive today, has declared that he is a masquerader and has committed murder of a church member. His purpose in troubling me was to drive me away from God's church. Just a little additional information on how such murders were committed. Roy Holiday, who also became the president of the United Church of God, now retired, has 5 adult married sons with children. He, his sons, and their families, and perhaps 5 to 10 other ministers in the area with their families, got together for the night to be much observed. There must have been about 30 to 40 people in all. They all wanted to get the credit for murder to meet the masquerader requirement by just committing one murder. They invited one non-masquerader church member, probably an elderly and sick person, poisoned his food so that he died. Though God Almighty often protects church members miraculously, in this case God allowed the murder to be carried out to test the masquerader ministers. God prophesied this would happen in the end time and also gave his judgment on such ministers and their families in Ezekiel 9 verses 4 to 6, which state, "And the Lord said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. And to the others he said in my hearing, Go after him through the city and smite. Let not your eye spare, neither have pity. Slay utterly old and young, Both maids, meaning normally in other judgments, in such massacres, unmarried young women are spared, but not in this case, because how heinous the crime is in God's sight. Continuing, and little children, which means infants also, and women. But come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. In prophecy, sanctuary means God's church. Then they began at the ancient men, that is, the leading ministers in their 60s and 70s, which were before the house. Coming back to my experiences, Herman Hay, a leading evangelist who was the church expert at Worldwide Church of God on racial and ethnic background of people in the world, visited Chicago. I had discussed my situation with him about dating and marrying white girls. He did not prohibit it. So I took that to mean yes. Incidentally, Hay was a German masquerader, committed murder, and was put to death for that crime decades ago. And I went to attend the annual church festival called the Feast of Tabernacles in Eugene, Oregon in 1983 because I had never met Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong, and he would be there to celebrate the 50th anniversary of what we consider the modern founding of the modern era of God's church. Because Roy Holiday was still troubling me, I wanted to complain to Mr. Armstrong. I discussed my complaint with Mr. Armstrong's personal assistant Aaron Dean. Roy Holiday was then transferred from Chicago but not demoted in any way. If he had continued in Chicago, I am certain he would have kept troubling me with the goal of driving me out of God's church. Incidentally, after the Worldwide Church of God split into different organizations because the new leader Joseph Tkach Sr. and his son Joseph Tkach Jr. changed all the doctrines, Aaron Dean then joined the United Church of God. He is among those who have committed murder and has declared he is a masquerader who has joined their side Joe Tkach Jr. had committed murder in the 1980s. That's why he was allowed by masqueraders to become the head of the Worldwide Church of God and its successor organization, Grace Communion International. Roy Holiday was replaced by another minister, Mike Swaggerty, who is still in Grace Communion International, though retired. When I complained about people troubling me to him, he told me not to attend church because I was accusing the brethren. After 4 to 6 months, he called me to have a meeting to ask if I wanted to return to church. I told him that I obviously wanted to do so. In our meeting, he told me not to accuse the brethren anymore. I had to agree to it. Later on, I learned that he had a house in Ohio at his previous posting. He had to buy a house in the Chicago area. He was unable to sell his house in Ohio, which means he was paying an extra mortgage. Perhaps that motivated him to call me and ask me if I wanted to return to church, knowing fully well that he had put me out of church to drive me away from it. And now God was intervening so that he could not sell his house. He was able to sell his house quickly after I was allowed to attend church again. In 2019, Michael Swaggerty also declared that he was a masquerader and committed murder, like perhaps 70 ministers, according to Ezekiel 8:11, including Roy Holiday. These 70 or so men are some of the top leaders in Grace Communion International and now other Church of God organizations such as Philadelphia Church of God, Restored Church of God, Living Church of God, United Church of God, and Church of God, a worldwide association. Then my immigration status and green card situation took me to Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1985. There I landed from the frying pan into the fire with the local minister Eugene Knoll. This man actually murdered a member of God's church while I was there in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He tried to murder me a few times when he got me alone for counseling. But as it has happened in other cases, God's angel sort of binds the person and does not let him move when he tries to attack me. Again, I'm guessing this is what happens because I don't know when the person is trying to attack me. Noel also put me out of the church when I again complained about people who were troubling me in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The reason given was the same: for accusing the brethren. I was getting fed up with this treatment and decided to wait longer for him to call me to be allowed back into the church. If he didn't call, only after a long time would I call to be allowed back. But after a few months, he sent a message through another church member to ask if I wanted to come back into the church again. Of course, I said yes. I was allowed back under the same condition, to not accuse the brethren any longer. Then I learned the real reason why he had sent the message to ask if I wanted to come back to church. Ever since he had put me out, he started suffering from excruciating pain in his leg, which did not stop. Apparently, God Almighty forced him to send the message to me. After I was allowed back in, pain in his leg went away. I think I had him as my minister for about 7 to 8 years. Eugene Knoll was subsequently executed for the murder of the church member he had committed. Now, some aside information about Gerald R. Flurry, head of the Philadelphia Church of God. I have revealed that he is among those who committed murder on or around April 19, 2019. His son, Stephen Flurry, who will most likely succeed him at Philadelphia Church of God, in case Gerald Flurry passes away, as he is 87 years old and in failing health. Stephen Flurry was also present when they and others committed the murder of a non-masquerader member of God's church. Gerald Flurry's wife and Stephen Flurry's mother was a non-masquerader American. Stephen was still influenced by his dad to commit the heinous crime of the same people as his mother. He too will pose a deadly danger to genuine members of God's church who attend the Philadelphia Church of God and are non-masqueraders when he becomes the leader of the church. Gerald Flurry was disfellowshipped in 1989 and started Philadelphia Church of God. Then from 1983 onwards, major splits in the church began after the Takachas had dismantled everything God had built in the church through Mr. Armstrong. During those years, I was not troubled by ministers who were appointed as pastors in my local area. Some of them were non-masqueraders. In 2001, I joined United Church of God and have been attending there until a couple of weeks ago. Now let me give you an idea of what has happened in the United Church of God and the reason for the recent action against me. The new president, Rick Shaby of United Church of God, was appointed on May 18, 2022. Other top people in church administration are Mark Welch, Operation Manager for Ministerial and Member Services, Frank Dunkel, Professor and Coordinator for Ambassador Bible College, or ABC, which is the church's one-year program to train new people. Then Darius McNeely, one of the 3 presenters on the church's TV broadcast program Beyond Today, and who is also a member of the 12-member Council of Elders that votes on all major decisions, including budgets and confirming appointments, and Aaron Dean, former personal assistant of Mr. Armstrong and a member of the Council of Elders. Besides these 5 men currently serving in administrative positions, I'll name 3 more who are now retired from active ministry in the United Church of God. Roy Holiday, former president of United Church of God, Gary Antian, former professor and coordinator of ABC or Ambassador Bible College, and Dr. Donald Ward, former chairman of the Council of Elders. The reason I am exposing these men is that they all have declared that they are German masqueraders and have joined their side by meeting the hurdle qualification of committing murder on April 19, 2019. God has already pronounced his judgment on them as mentioned earlier. They have guaranteed their physical death either at the hands of whites of non-German ancestry or at God's hands during the last 1 year of the Great Tribulation, which we call the Day of the Lord, where, as a last resort, God will crush them with 100-pound hailstones, if needed, which is mentioned in Revelation 16, verse 21. These men have only a narrow window of opportunity to qualify for salvation if they sincerely repent. But sometime in the future, they will definitely be asked to put genuine members of God's church to death. So that's why I'm warning members of God's church, all of them, to be on alert. I've already mentioned that a few years earlier I was told that I am not recognized as a prophet in the United Church of God. But I was not stopped from continuing to attend and not told to change anything on my website. Why then did the current administration force the issue? The answer is that since that time, almost all the top people in church administration have committed murder and can be ordered to do things by the masqueraders. Perhaps the Germans are feeling the heat as I continue to expose more of their atrocities and show people around the world how they are being used by the Germans. That could upset German plans for their attempts to conquer the world. They simply want me to stop preaching, close my religion website, and my YouTube and Facebook channels. I am also planning to pursue some discrimination lawsuits for compensation. If I stop my activities, it would likely weaken my cases and no law firm would be willing to pursue it. They would continue to achieve their objective of keeping me living in poverty. That's why German masqueraders would have ordered the church leaders to stop my activities if I wanted to stay in the church. The fact that the current administration has decided to force the issue leads me to suspect another development. The 12-member Council of Elders holds the power in the church and can keep the president in check. However, since the top leadership has forced the issue against me, I suspect that real power through the council may have shifted in favor of the masqueraders who may now hold the majority. I hope they don't have a super three-fourths majority because then they can change doctrines and dismantle everything we inherited from Mr. Armstrong. I've already heard two jarring mentions of alien doctrines such as new moons, which might lead to celebrating of new moons or new months, and a sermon given on grace, which might lead to a change in our fundamental beliefs that adherence to the law is no longer required. Thus, it seems masqueraders may have succeeded in taking over the United Church of God. Us genuine members will have to continue to pray and rely on God to enable us to continue to worship Him as He requires us to do and live His way of life. So, what is my next course of action? I really have not cared about what office I hold, whether that of a prophet or not. It's for other people to verify the authenticity of the information I've provided and then wait to reach their own conclusion. And it also makes no difference to me whether they conclude that I hold the office of a prophet or that I don't. But there is no doubt in my mind that people will be able to easily verify some of the information I've provided, such as listening to what Satan and the demons palm off as my thoughts and my weekly messages, and determine whether the United Church of God leaders are lying or that I am delusional to make the claims I make. I will have to discuss the matter further with my church to see how I could start attending church again. I would be willing to take down some matter from my website they deem speculative. I will be more careful about the claims I make in the future, but I doubt if they will accept these changes after I have exposed the top leaders, and the evil deed of murdering a church member whom they are supposed to be protecting physically and spiritually. I had no choice but to expose them because they pose a deadly threat to other genuine non-masquerader members, because there is no doubt in my mind that they will be asked to murder them just before the masqueraders plan to start a civil war in America and British Commonwealth nations. They cannot ask me to stop my weekly messages since they claim nobody can hear them. They will probably ask me to take down my religion website altogether and discontinue my YouTube and Facebook channels, Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini. I simply will not agree to do this. Therefore, I will probably have to live with the fact that I will not be allowed to attend God's church. United Church of God is God's true church in its current form. Now, attending just any church, such as a Baptist or evangelical church, is not an option for me. It's possible God might intervene in some way to force the leaders to ask me to come back, as He forced the ministers in Chicago and Milwaukee, Mike Swaggerty, and Eugene Knoll, respectively, who had put me out of the church, to send messages to ask if I wanted to come back to church. I will simply continue to pray and let God work things out. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos and read my articles on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube channels and Facebook channel, Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, to view and get information on the latest videos.